Great, great, great.
Okay.
Yeah, this is for my college class based on activism, and I hope to make a project based on awareness. If I can just get people to explain their real life experiences, it'll help to bring that information to people who don't get it otherwise.
Okay. What
So,
college is this at?
this is at George Mason University in Virginia.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Hello, Michael. Oh, skipping ahead. What would you prefer to be called?
Mike is fine. I'm okay with Michael too, but either way.
Okay. What state or sorry, yeah, what state, town, or city do you reside in?
Currently, I'm in Fairmont, West Virginia.
Okay. So would you say that you are familiar with Appalachian? Oh,
Yes. I've lived here my entire life, but also, um, for my PhD at West Virginia University, I'm actually studying Appalachian students in the college composition classroom. So I've had to rate a lot on like Appalachian, uh, why Appalachia is the way it is, which is really complicated, much more complicated than a lot of people think.
as I'm finding. Um, how long have you or your family lived where you are?
Uh, trying to, so it depends on who you ask in my family. Um, my maternal, actually no, my paternal grandmother, we did the ancestry DNA test, and we found that her family has lived here since at least the 1700s. We don't know how far back they go. But the rest of my family members come from very recent immigration in Europe. I'm actually mostly Italian. My grandfather came here when he was 7 in the 1920s from Calabria, Italy. He came here to Farmington, West Virginia, to work in the mines. Uh, my paternal grandfather he was born here, but his father was Polish. Also, he lived in Monongah, West Virginia. And these are all in Marion County, Fairmont, Farmington, Monongah. And same deal. His father came here to work in the coal mines. My grandfather's father came here to work in the coal mines. That's why most European immigrants came here in the first place, especially in the early 20th century. My my all of my mom's family came from Europe, came from Italy as well. And yeah, so it's mostly I've got one grandparent who goes back like hundreds of years here. I don't know how long, really. I think she's mostly Irish, but we don't know when exactly her family came here. And the rest of my family is mostly Italian and a little bit of Polish. And they mostly have been here since late 1800s, early 1900s.
Very cool. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do for work?
Well, I'm a grad student getting a PhD done at West Virginia University. And what I'm interested in is for my dissertation, I'm studying how do Appalachian students, uh, how do they, this is the thing about a PhD, it's hard to figure out what you're studying. Uh, it's about trying to figure out, sorry, I got to get my head organized. What how exactly can we use their home background to help them transition into more of a college life? Because what we're finding is that a lot of and this is true of all students, not just students in Appalachia, but students in Appalachia they tend to come from backgrounds that are very different from what college requires of them. And so that often results in a culture shock for the student coming into college. And I want to try to see how can we look into their prior background, where they came from, their family life, in order to build a bridge from their home identity into the new academic identity that they're looking at, that they need to acclimate into. And does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. I've had to write on this topic a lot more than a lot before I even started this project. Uh, yeah, and I find like yeah, like higher education is a big barrier to the income inequality that we see. Like a lot of solutions um, for like jobs, say, require maybe the education or the training that don't exist yet in these areas.
Yeah.
I guess we already dipped into your educational background.
Hmm.
Um, we talked about your job a little bit. I mean, you personally, do you have money saved? And
Yeah.
okay,
Oh, money saved. Like what kind of what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What was the rest of the question?
I think I would follow up with like, how many paychecks worth of money do you have saved?
Well, I am in academia, so I have a I'm thinking of I get paid by the university every supposed to be every 2 weeks. You're paid every, yeah, but and it's not much because you're a grad student.
Okay. Um, I think I'm gonna transition to more family experience. Like,
Yeah.
is there any like military presence or experience in your family?
Yes, both of my grandparents served in the military. My maternal grandfather, the one who came from Italy, he uh he went to Japan during World War II. Neither of them saw combat. My paternal grandfather, the one with more of the Polish background, he was sent to Germany, so two of the Axis powers. But they were sent there after the war ended. Their job was to help with like reconstruction. Uh, and my great grandfather, my maternal great grandfather, actually served in the Italian army back when he was in Italy. And I feel like that's kind of complicated because after he came to America, I didn't really know him that well, but he would because he served in the Italian army, he wouldn't have been honored like an American veteran would. But he had that background serving in World War One in the Italian army. He was down in the foxholes. It was, and from what I've heard, it was pretty traumatic for him.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, okay. I think I'm does you or your family like have any experience with like government assistance, either like loans, tuition, or more of like the food stamps, like income assistance?
Not really, no.
Okay.
Um, would scholarships count as assistance?
Yeah, like any sort of government intervention. I'm really trying to map that relation or that sentiment in Appalachia with government in all forms.
Yeah, we've never had any real government assistance that I know of. We do have something in West Virginia. I don't know if this actually counts, but we have a scholarship, a college scholarship called the Promise Scholarship. And what that means is if you make a high enough grade point average in a uh, high school in West Virginia, you can go to any college in West Virginia for free for 4 years, as long as you keep a certain GPA at that college. I did get the Promise Scholarship and I managed to keep it all 4 years. So I actually don't, I'm actually very lucky in that I don't have any of the college student loans that a lot of colleges do. I had that pretty much paid for.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's where I'm going to ask you to describe your community, your town, your people. Like, what do they value? What do they believe? What do they do for fun? I drafted the Jaguars defense for fantasy football this season, and they're not doing well. But that's me.
Okay. Well, let's see. This is an odd question because here's the thing is that communities in Appalachia, we're not just, here's something I think we need to keep in mind is that Appalachians aren't just one thing.
Hmm.
And the communities here are actually pretty diverse. But I can talk about like the specific place where we live. We live in a little section outside of Fairmont called Apple Valley. And what we do for fun, well, my parents like to travel a lot. Um, I like to go hiking. I've always been fascinated by wildlife and nature, going out and seeing that. Um, I think I grew up, fishing, hunting a little later, but mostly just mostly doing a lot of things that felt very normal to me. Maybe wouldn't be very normal. Okay, I do have one moment that I realized that I'm not like other people, and that's when I went to college, and it was a college in Fairmont, but I had a classmate from DC, and we talked we were sitting down to dinner once, and I talked once about how when I was little my grandfather would hunt squirrels, and we would cook them and eat them, and because he was Italian he would actually put them in cook them in spaghetti sauce and peppers, and he looked totally flabbergasted. He actually said to me, "How could you eat a squirrel? That's like eating a rat." And maybe in DC that would be like eating a rat, but to me that's just what I grew up around, that was normal.
Very cool. I have that very same experience of
Okay.
being in my uncle and cousin's backyard and shooting a squirrel. And I don't remember how they cooked it up, but I remember serving it with barbecue sauce, and
Mhm.
that squirrel tasted bad. The barbecue
Oh,
sauce could not mask it.
oh
Uh,
no.
no, but a treasured memory.
Yeah. Yeah, you
Um,
could say that.
have you witnessed any changes in the area that you live since living there, economically, politically, socially, anything?
uh I can actually no. So my I the only change I've really seen is socially, politically. When my grandfather moved out here, which was my maternal grandfather, he was the pretty much the only one out here. And people thought he was crazy to come out here because they thought, why do you want to move out there? Why do you want to move out of town, being Fairmont? And he tried to convince them, the town can only grow one way, which was south of town, because the Morgantown is up north, and Clarksburg's a little bit down south. But he just wanted to move out. He wanted to build a house on top of a hill, and his my grandmother, everyone was like, he's taking you out to the woods. Now there was, from what I've heard, I was not alive at this time, but that drive from the middle of Fairmont to where our house is now, there was nothing out that way. Nothing. There were just fields. Now it's full of now there's a shopping mall, and now there's a bunch of little restaurants, like a Mexican restaurant there, and all sorts of things. Just but that's one way I've seen things sprouting around here. Like, it's become more populated in our area. It
Mhm.
used to be that no one was out here, and now that Jojo's built, that's what I called my grandfather. Now that he built his house up here, now everyone wanted to move out here, and there was a golf course right next to us, and a lot of that. Politically, so I'm not an expert on political science, so I can't really, I don't want to explain like what's going on or anything like that, but my grandfather was and my parents were Democrats all of their life. And then when exactly what it must have been during I would say it was during the Obama and then going into the Trump presidency where a lot of my family started switching towards more conservative leniencies, and I found it really frustrating. But yeah, I just that's the biggest political shift I've seen is that there seemed to be more of a in the last 15 years, there's been a bigger shift from being Democrats to supporting more conservative ideals. And that seems to be the biggest change I've noticed.
Okay. I mean, talking about your area's history, it seems like you have good internet. Um,
Yeah,
do you know how long there has been internet in your area?
I our family has had internet since I must have been 12 years old, which would have been I'm 35 now, so 35 minus 12 is
23?
yeah, about 23 years for about we've had internet for that long. So yeah,
Okay.
internet's never really been a problem for us personally.
hmm That's one of the leading questions I might end up asking many people. Uh,
Hmm.
um, I think because well, the areas of Appalachia I think are so overlooked by media. Is there
Hmm.
personally like a topic that you maybe see in your community that's not covered by the news right now?
Yeah, I think we need to talk more about the opioid epidemic, which is I think we need to talk more about surface mining and the effects of surface mining. It's not so common where I'm located in the northern part of the state, but down in the southern part of the state, there's a lot more of that, and it is wreaking hell on the communities down there. Um, I wish more people would cover the flooding that's been happening in eastern Kentucky and southern West Virginia, but I haven't seen a lot of that on national media at all. And the worst I've seen is when you see people who are supposedly all for, you know, other cultures and human rights and acting all woke, but then when the when the floods happen in Kentucky, they'd say things like "let them swim," or they get what they you get what they get what they deserve because they voted Republican all these years. The problem with that statement is that very few people in Appalachia actually vote. Um, the last time I checked, only 20% of West Virginia's population actually voted. And yet this whole area gets portrayed as Trump country, even though the vast majority of people here didn't actually vote. And I find that frustrating that the media wants to portray this place as Trump country, like we're all Republican and we're all racist and we're all, you know, uh, homophobic, when really very few people here actually voted for him or could go vote for him because they weren't able to even register or get to a uh, polling booth. And what we're finding is that when people ask why do Appalachians keep voting against our interests, really one of the main reasons is voter suppression.
Do you care to expand on that?
The way that this is done, and I'm not a real expert on this myself. There's a book that I would like you to read for this, and I can give you a bunch of resources actually. There's a book called Elizabeth Catt. It's called What You Are Getting Wrong About Appalachia. anyone who is interested in Appalachian studies, that should be the very first book you read.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Gathering that maybe you're part of West Virginia.
I'm sorry, what was that again?
Oh, I think I'm gathering that are you in would you describe yourself in an urban area of West Virginia?
No, more of a rural area. I'm
Okay.
more outside of Fairmont.
Let's see. One of the internet questions was if you called like emergency services, if you called 911, how long do you think it would take for emergency
Oh,
services to get to you?
I would say half an hour.
Mhm.
That is one of the issues that we have here is there is very little transportation here. I mean, not that there's no transportation, but there's no public transportation and the infrastructure is not very good. Um, One thing I didn't realize until I met wife. My wife is from China, and I didn't realize how poor the infrastructure and the transportation was here until she told me what it's like over there because she said they have bullet trains that can take you uh pretty much anywhere in the country in a day, and we don't have that. She felt when she came to Morgantown, she felt like she was stranded because she couldn't walk anywhere. Most cities are designed to be very walkable, but the cities here really aren't. You pretty much need a car if to get anywhere in West Virginia.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Uh, 5 years, 10 years. Where do you expect yourself? What do you expect yourself to be doing?
Hopefully I'll have a job teaching in a college or a university. I'd like to teach English classes because I'm in the English profession right now. Um, so I'd like to teach more composition classes. I hope to teach another literature class soon, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Uh, but I'm also not opposed to taking a non-academic job. So just what happens, you know?
Yep, feel that. Let me see. Okay, final question. If you had a week of vacation, what would you do with it?
A week of vacation, probably go somewhere like Florida or somewhere I haven't been to yet. Or if I stay in the state, I might go somewhere like maybe stay a week. I would love to take a road trip around West Virginia, but either that or maybe head down to Florida or maybe out west or somewhere like that. Just take a road trip somewhere just to get out for a week.
Oh, it would surely take that long. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, like I cannot imagine how big Virginia is, and I'm sure, yeah, West Virginia, so similarly, just so big. It would take you a
Hmm.
week to see so much of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Mike, thanks so much. I feel like this is a lot of good video, a lot of real answers, and I think I learned. You're my first interview, so I feel like I
Oh, good.
learned uh, where to go from here.
Hmm.
Um, I could ask you, do you have running water? How long have you had running water? You know, d-
Yeah, we have running water. Yeah.
but I think I don't need to ask all those questions. So yeah, I mean, thanks for talking to me.
No
Uh,
problem.
and I'll end up cutting your answers probably into a video that I will post for awareness somewhere.
Sure. Yeah. There is one thing, there was one thing I think you might want to add
Sure.
to this. And I was thinking about the last question in your survey. What two things I want to add.
Yeah.
A couple things I want to add to your survey. What are some questions you would ask? Here are some things you might consider when you are you giving like a presentation on this?
Um, yeah, 50% chance I give like a real presentation, or I can make just a one big edited video where I am omniscient narrator.
Yeah. Here's an activity you might consider if you do a presentation, and I think you should do this yourself, and I think I said this in your survey. Ask yourself, what do you think of when you think of an Appalachian person, what do you picture? Or when you think of a person from West Virginia, what do you picture?
Little do you know, that is a very appropriate question for my class, because my class is
Yes.
called Identity and Conflict. And I have
Nice.
had to discuss and write about all the different groups in Appalachia. And the intent of the assignment is to break it up so hard that there are a million different subgroups and it becomes impossible to classify.
Yeah. Subgroups. Got another book for you to look at.
But go ahead, shoot.
Okay. It's called Another Appalachia. Another Appalachia. It's by Nima Avashia. Coming up queer and Indian in a mountain place.
Hmm.
It's a really good book. It's a collection of like personal essays that she's written. Um, so that's another good book to read. But yeah, think about what do you picture and where do when you think about those pictures, where did those images come from? Like, do they come from the media? Do they come from uh popular culture? Do they come from movies? Do they come from rumors from your friends? It's just something to think about. Another thing you might want to consider, and this might be a question you might ask other interviewees, you might want to ask them, has anyone ever commented on your accent? Has anyone ever said something about your accent?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
One
mean, I mean, if you have time, do you have an experience with that question?
I do. I remember once I was on my family and I were on vacation to I think it was I forget where it was. I think it was the Bahamas actually. And I met another group of kids my age, and we were about in high school, I guess, high school or college. And from what I remember, they were from California. And as soon as I opened my mouth, the very first thing they said was, "You have an accent." It's like the very first thing that, and I don't think they meant anything by it, but when you actually, so yeah, I actually, on Reddit itself, also I had, and I think people are less punchable on Reddit, so they tend to be more um psychopathic. But I had a person from Long Island, no prompting at all, contact me on one of my posts and ask me, "Hey, is it true that all West Virginians participate in rape and incest?" That's a huge stereotype. The incest stereotype is huge around here.
I saw that on
And
the survey.
there's no evidence of that. There's actually no evidence that incest occurs more often in Appalachia than in any other region.
I thank you. I think I will include more of those identity questions in future interviews. Do
Yeah,
people, do people comment on your accent, or do have people? What was the question? Has anyone ever commented on your accent? Or also,
yeah.
how, like, what assumptions do people make about you?
Did people treat you differently after they learned where you're from?
That's a very good one. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, this is so helpful.
Thank you.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. I'm gonna stop recording.